STEM, S-T-E-M, the future of our education. In fact, I might say it's the salvation of our education. I'm Trudy Haynes, and welcome to Let's Talk About It. My guests today include, right next to me, this handsome young man is Dr. Patrick Oates. And he is, I can't even see this. I wrote it and I can't see it. He is the Vice President for Science Education with Gamble and Huff. And that's very interesting. Next to him is Dr. Chad Womack, who is with United Negro College Fund and Director of STEM for that organization. Jonathan Lee, who is CEO and GEI Inc. What does that mean?
Global Energy Initiative, trying to make STEM infectious and ubiquitous, especially in underserved and underrepresented communities.
Okay. STEM is an acronym, of course. So what does it mean actually? What is it?
Dr. Womack.
STEM refers to science, technology, engineering, and math. You put those together, it's called STEM.
Why do you consider that so strong?
STEM is really not just about math and science, it's also about a mindset and being prepared for the future with the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that are relevant for the 21st century innovation economy.
Relevant right now.
That's correct.
I mean, if we don't do it, we're going to sort of slip between the tracks. You know, at one time, America was honored as having the best educational system in the world. Now we've fallen way down, almost the last education system in the world. We're being beaten by China and India and countries never heard of, Russia, England. Why?
Well, I think personally that we've lost sight of the importance of education in the quest for American citizens to focus on the dollar, so to speak. We as a nation have not placed the emphasis on education, therefore the cuts in education you see statewide, not only here in Pennsylvania, but across the country. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at developed nations, we have slipped. The United States has slipped to, I believe, somewhere around 7 or 8.
Yeah, we're way down.
But there are other nations much smaller than the United States that are thriving and continue to thrive in science and science education. So I think it's very important for us to really embrace and understand the fact that when we train all students to be science literate, then we're increasing the opportunity for young men and women to pursue not only careers in science, but also just feel comfortable about science. Mm-hmm. So many students are intimidated by chemistry and biology.
I'm one of them.
And it's really because of probably your teachers weren't as good as they could have been, mm-hmm. or should have been. And that's the same thing that exists today. I was a student of science, been a student of science since probably about 4th grade. But it's because of someone exciting me, mm-hmm. and igniting an interest in science.
I know there are attempts to get children or students interested, mm-hmm. by recreating and reinventing the way things are taught.
That's right.
Is that in your project?
Yes, we strongly believe that STEM education, science education, is really about an alignment between what happens in the K-12 system with higher ed, universities and colleges, but also industry. And let's be clear, the economy doesn't so much care about what degree you have per se. They care about what you know how to do. Where do you insert in the value chain in the economy and the market really determines your financial and economic outcomes. So preparing our kids for their future by aligning what they're learning at the K-12 level with what they are going to be required to know how to do after they get out of high school, go through college, or if they go directly into the technology workforce are the things that we're beginning to focus on in terms of new educational models.
Now you mentioned about K-12. Isn't it possible that we could even start before that age with these subjects and making them part of the play that they go through in kindergarten and 1st grade and 2nd grade? Is that being done?
Yes, I mean, it's clear that by the fourth grade, you start to see that difference between boys who are beginning to be less inclined with math and science versus majority and even Asian kids. One of the concerns that I think we all share is that we get our kids going in the right direction as early as possible. And that actually starts in pre-K, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
My mother taught first grade for over 30 years in the city of Philadelphia, and it was a kitchen conversation about how kids, black kids predominantly, African American kids, were coming in the door in first grade behind. And it's critical that we do all we can to invest as early as possible
Into
so
these
that-
subjects.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
we have to make them a part of our lives,
That's
really.
right. That's right.
Because when you mention science and technology and math, they're still part of our everyday life. So why not invest this kind of education at an early age and doing it right at home? It has to come from, what's going to happen to English writing and arithmetic?
Well, you know, I think, Ms. Haynes, that it's important to point out that it's expected for students to be able to read. It's expected that
Which they
students
can't.
be able to write and do math
Which they can't.
at early age. But science is something for years has only been focused upon at the high school
Level, yes.
And so what Dr. Womack and I are very interested in doing is really reiterating the importance of all students, all men and women, all American
Women,
citizens be science literate. Everything has a science component to it.
Yeah, but you're finding people taking away from the schools even for those simple subjects that we were accustomed to. Art, history, just physical education you can't even get in some schools anymore. No homework. So now how are you going to reinstall those kind of practices?
Well, one of the things that we want to get away from in this discussion about STEM and science education is the either-or proposition. It's not either-or, it's both and. We have to embed STEM and science and math in everything we do, just like we need to embed the ability to communicate through reading and writing and being able to share ideas, communicate. Those are the things that even scientists and engineers have to be proficient at. So it's not either you're a scientist and engineer or you go down that path or you learn how to write and read and that kind of thing. It's both. Part of the challenge that we have now is reconstructing what it means to educate in the 21st century. We've got to move from what we call 20th century models to where we need to be. Let's face it, our kids are swimming in digital technologies, iPads, mobile technology,
So shouldn't that
phones,
make it easier for you to bring STEM into being?
Well, I think those are tools that we've begun to embrace. For years, science was taught by just a lecturer standing in front of the class and just lecturing.
That's
the students.
past
That's how
history.
we were taught.
Yeah.
And I think certainly in a number of settings that I've been in, college settings and so on, it's still taught that way. But today, students learn differently. So we've got to embrace that fact and really use creative tools and innovative tools like iPads and all of these other kinds of
Social media things,
resources, right? Social media, whatever it may be, to encourage students to begin to comprehend science.
Right.
Even, quick interjection, even, or we talk about STEM, let's talk about STEAM, adding the A in STEM. Art, a lot of our kids, they love art, they love graffiti. Look at a lot of our walls and trains in the city. But who's taking the time on a scaled up basis to teach our kids how to turn art into animation? In Philadelphia, I can use my smartphone or Google. I probably can find 1 or 2 players out there. That's sad.
Okay, well, particularly United Negro College Fund, those are schools. How effective is your interest with them?
Well, I can tell you that I'm a proud Morehouse graduate. Patrick and I are good friends. We've been friends for years. Proud Tuskegee graduate. And we both...
Proud Howardite.
Proud Howard graduate.
I'm also a Howard grad.
All right.
So we come from the HBCU tradition and family, and it truly is a family. And we look at our institutions like they are yeshivas. There are special institutions that we need to invest in, and not just for the sake of the historical purpose and mission, but for the future. We need our HBCUs to provide the kind of high quality education for our kids and our grandkids and their children as well. And we at the UNCF are developing a STEM innovation platform that's going to channel investments from the tech community and foundations to support the build out of a new 21st century model for STEM education across our campuses. So I work on a daily basis with my alma mater and with other schools like Tuskegee and Florida A&M and Howard.
And these schools, by the way, are being threatened
Yes.
for financial reasons.
Yeah.
And I hope that anyone that's listening there that is an alma mater will support those schools. We need all the schools, whether they're black or white, or, you know, we need education. And the only way that we're going to solve this problem is to collect and you know, get together, combine those efforts.
But let me say this, you know, I'm also a proud Philadelphian. This is my home, this is where I was born and raised. And what deeply concerns me, and I think concerns all of us on this stage, is what's happening with the school district, the lack of investment from the state, from the city, and I would even say from the community. We need to step up.
That's right.
And we need to step up not just for brick and mortar, but for our kids, our flesh and bone. And that means that we need to reinvigorate and recommit to make sure that all of our efforts are focused and channeled on making sure that our kids are in positive, challenging learning environments. Dr. Oates works with the Universal companies. They have a variety of charter schools that are performing, and we need to support them. We need to support what Dr. Height is doing with the school district. Again, it's not an either-or proposition. It's really about a both and the focal point should be on our kids and not on brick and mortar.
You're working with Gamble and Huff.
Well, Gamble and Huff is Kenny Gamble and Mr. Huff's music industry. Universal Companies is a Kenny Gamble company, but it's not Gamble and Huff. It's Universal Companies. And Universal has about 8 charter schools here in Philadelphia and 2 charter schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Out of the 10 charter schools, we have our flagship high school here in Philadelphia, which is Alden Reed High School. And we're trying to, I was brought on board by Dr. Penny Nixon. Dr. Nixon is our senior executive vice president for education. And our goal really is to just impact the education system at Universal in a dramatic way.
Is this a Muslim organization? This is a Muslim organization?
No, not at all. No.
So a lot of people think that the Muslims are ahead of us, ordinary American black Africans.
I mean, this is an organization, we have Christians, we have Muslims, we have Jews. I mean, this is not a Muslim company.
Okay.
I'm a Christian myself, so, and I'm very proud to work for Universal. And Mr. Gamble and Mr. Islam are Muslims, but it's not a Muslim company.
Good.
And that's a perception that a number of people have. And I understand why. But in any event, our mission is to enhance the lives of young men and women at our schools. And we're doing that certainly in science by totally reshaping the science curriculum, looking to develop partnerships with any organization in Philadelphia and the surrounding counties that will empower our students to achieve their very best in science, technology, engineering, and math. I've managed to partner with the Philadelphia Zoo through my association on the board of the Philadelphia Zoo, the Academy of Natural Sciences, the Wistar Research Institute, as well as...
So you're embracing a lot of the organizations
That's right.
and the outlets, the resources that exist here.
that exists right here in our backyard.
How can we get people more involved?
I want to answer that by doing what we're doing here today at PhillyCam. the messaging campaign, in my opinion, is fractured, broken, almost non-existent to scale up STEM. Change the narrative, educate our teachers, educate our parents and communities. There's a school model I spoke to in Philadelphia. Not one of the heads of the Parent Teachers Association knew what the word STEM meant. How could you not? I'm not going to point fingers, it's about solution-based thinking. This is Philadelphia, the region of eds and meds. Majority of new jobs in this region, you need some STEM-based skill set, and STEM is just the on-ramp into that superhighway, so to speak. And Dr. Oates and Dr. Womack can talk about that much more in depth than me, but to change the mindset, the narrative, the campaign, the conversation.
And I think Jonathan's right. I think it's critical that we just, in a sense, make people aware of the fact that by embracing science and technology, they're embracing opportunities for not only themselves but their children for the future. Because here in Philadelphia, it's about meds and eds, right? And more specifically about science and technology. Those are the jobs of the future. And whether it be just a high school diploma that's required or a bachelor's, master's,
No
or
more.
PhD, we've got to.
No more. That bachelor's degree doesn't mean anything
Right,
anymore.
it means very little.
Yeah.
But it means very little. But how do we prepare our students for those kinds of opportunities? Where are we going to be 20 years from now? Less than 10 years from now, Comcast is building this huge research and development center right here in Philadelphia. I can't remember what major company has done that in the last, certainly not in the last 40 years.
Used to be GSK, but now.
Well, yeah, GSK did it, but not a R&D facility.
yeah.
So when you say research and development, you're thinking of very highly paid, highly technical, a highly technical workforce, PhDs and people with that level of understanding and discipline. So my point is, how can we ensure that our students even have an opportunity to apply for those jobs?
How do we?
Well, one of the things to pick up on Patrick's point and what Jonathan was saying about the on-ramp, there are a couple ways we can do it. One of the things that I would like for folks listening to this or watching this is to really understand that now with online platforms and access, you can learn how to code, how to program, how to become a software engineer without actually having to get a PhD in it. I'm not dissuading folks from going through undergraduate and graduate school, but at the end of the day, it's not just about the knowledge or the K part of the KSAs. It's important to have that knowledge base, but it's also about the skills and the abilities. And I remind folks that the billion-dollar companies that are out in Silicon Valley, like Microsoft, like Facebook, like Google, they were started by teenagers because they knew how to code. And they could, these were very creative folks. Apple was started by Steve Jobs and Wozniak back when they were really in high school, when they started fooling around with circuitry, etc. So we need to get our kids, our community, connected to that environment in which they